What's going on, Trophy Kids? We got an awesome one for you today. We were talking AFC East. We're breaking down every team, giving our opinions, giving you some information to look ahead for in the season. I do apologize for the audio. It does get a little laggy. We're making a switch to a different software next week, but I do apologize ahead of time. Hopefully you can power through it because there's a lot of good information in there. We're also giving our thoughts on the NBA Finals. It's a good one. Let's go. And welcome to Trophy Kids presented by Bad News Media. It is July 23rd. We are back for another breakdown. We are breaking down the AFC East today. I've brought back Michael as always. How are we doing today, good sir?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I am quite excited for this one just because the division's an interesting division. I think it's a little top heavy. There's some interesting, are their teams going to regress? Are teams going to make a push because they were setting up for the end of the season to make a push kind of stuff. But before we dive into it, big breaking news today. The NFL has put the hammer down on COVID this year. It is causing quite a controversy on Twitter right now. DeAndre Hopkins has weighed in. I think Judon weighed in on the Pats. I saw Leonard Fournette of the Bucs weigh in. The NFL has essentially come out and said, if you're an unvaccinated player and there's an outbreak on a team due to unvaccinated players, they have to reschedule that game and they cannot fit it in. They're not going to make any huge effort to do it. They will forfeit that game. Everybody will lose the paycheck for that week, including the opposing team, which seemed a little harsh. And basically said either get vaccinated or you run the risk of getting some forfeits. What are your initial thoughts? I did a very quick summarization of that. There was a big memo. I'm sure you all seen it on Twitter. Initial thoughts on this and kind of the direction everybody's taking with it.
Well, my initial thoughts as a Washington football team fan who I think has been highlighted as one of the two least vaccinated teams, I'm a little concerned. There's some serious penalties. I don't want to get into the feelings on it, I think maybe they're kind of harsh, maybe they're not, because they probably should be getting vaccinated, but they're not. The NFL clearly this year is not playing around.
Yeah. And I'm not going to get into a politicalization of this. I will say real quick note for people who are where's the NFL at in the vaccination rate? I saw today more than 75 players have been vaccinated or in the process of being vaccinated per the league. More than half the teams in the league have a vaccination rate than 80% of their players, which is an important note because people are going after the NFL Players Association. Why didn't they shut this down? And I think the simple answer would be they looked at the numbers and said the majority of our players are vaccinated. Majority rule wins here. We're not gonna go in. They have a lot other kind of bigger fish to fry in a way. The players who don't want to get vaccinated are obviously pissed. I view it as this: the NFL is essentially saying they are doing exactly what I sort of thought they said. They are one of the biggest businesses in the country. There are millions upon millions of dollars on the line, and they basically said we're not going to allow you to jeopardize our ability to make profit this year and put on games because you don't want to be vaccinated. Now, you can choose to risk it and not be vaccinated, but if you do and then you get COVID and you spread it to your team, then we're going to drop the hammer on you, which they're well in their rights. The weird part is when, DeAndre Hopkins is coming out here throwing out tweets like freedom ? And talking about, whether or not he'll retire. And I simply say, you have the freedom to do that. You have the freedom not to get vaccinated. They're not saying you have to be vaccinated, otherwise you can't play. They're still saying you can play. You can take the risk of not being vaccinated, catching COVID, and spreading it within your team. And if that happens, we're going to lay the hammer down. So it's a strong suggestion. I'm just not very surprised is my big take that they went this route because they don't want the season to be jeopardized when there is a vaccine out there that the majority of players, as I just said, have been willing to get.
Yeah, it is fully accessible now. Everyone in the country can get the vaccine. Season doesn't start officially until September. So, yeah, it's not a shock to hear that the league is coming down harshly on something that can be prevented.
Yep. It'll be interesting with lines, too. I would assume, I haven't looked at the betting lines, but from a betting perspective, I would assume some win totals might be adjusted for teams like the football team if they're very not vaccinated. The Bills, Cole Beasley, I know, is very outspoken. I would assume the Cardinals betting line. I didn't take a look because I was reading the stuff right before we recorded. I'm sure that's going to take a nosedive here on the win total because if Hop can't go, then that's a big chunk of their offense because yes, they have A.J. Brown, but he'll probably be hurt by week 8. So, it's a big wide receiver to lose.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing I like is these players thinking, I mean, I get it. Hey, I'm all for players doing kind of what they want, quote unquote. I'm for vaccinations. I think you should just get vaccinated, but I'm not going to kind of dive into that. We're a sports show here. But I do like how, some players are threatening to retire as if the NFL is even going to bat an eye at that. They're like, yeah, every year before the season even starts, a star goes down. And you know what? Like to an injury, the league goes on. Barry Sanders retires early. The league goes on. Like there's 1,000 dudes wanting to play in the NFL. Yes,
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins is a hell of an athlete. Yes, he is arguably one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver right now. But the league's going to go on if he retires.
No player's bigger than the league.
No, this ain't the UFC where Conor McGregor became bigger than the UFC, or an individual sport where a player can become bigger than the sport. Tiger Woods, golf, that type of thing. No. Nobody's bigger than the league here.
No.
Like Tom Brady goes down, next man up. Like it's just like nobody is. Aaron Rodgers, yes, it's a big controversy, but the league's going to go on.
We'll be okay without him.
Yes, exactly. All right, enough of that. Let's say that in terms of actual football breakdowns. We're starting with the AFC East today. We're not starting with them. We started with the North last week. Jumbling my words there. We're starting with the Jets because everything is new with them. I mean, they got rid of the dumpster fire coach in Adam Gase. I think rumor has it, is coaching high school football now. Like he isn't even in the NFL. I don't think he'll. I know for certain I shouldn't say no for certain. I would be willing to bet anything that Adam Gase will never be a head coach again in the NFL. He might get an NFL job, but he is out. The entire coaching staff has been reshuffled here. You have new quarterback, all new coaches, a ton of new talent. Where do we kind of stand here on the Jets and initial thoughts here?
I mean, my initial thoughts are these are going to kind of be the same old Jets. They have a pretty easy schedule, but I don't think it overly matters that much. I do like the coaching staff that they brought in, and they went and they got Zach Wilson, but I think he's going to take some time to develop. There's not a ton of talent around him. Corey Davis is exciting. He got paid a pretty good amount of money, but he's never produced like elite numbers, so we'll have to see if he's able to do that. With this opportunity in the Jets, they have Jamison Crowder, who's pretty decent, but ideally Crowder's like a third or fourth option you want on like an ideal star heavy offense. One thing I thought was kind of funny is I did look at this roster and I was just like, some of these players, I'm just like, who? I don't even know who that is. Like they're starting tight end Christopher Henderson that I saw or whatever. I never knew who he was. I went on Google and I looked him up. First, it came up, it was like a murderer. And I was like, well, let me just narrow this search down. So I did NFL, and they brought up C.J. Henderson on the Jags. I was like, well, that's not him. So I did NFL Jets, and I finally found out who he was. No disrespect to him. He's better at life than me. He's a professional athlete, but I had no idea who he was. So I don't know. I think this is kind of going to be the same old Jets kind of thing. Their offensive line's kind of poor. They didn't really do much to address it. They kind of addressed the defense, but I don't think that's enough to really bring this team together to actually compete very much. I think they're a few years away, and I just think Zach Wilson's going to struggle initially.
Yeah, I'd agree with kind of all of that. I mean, the first thing I look to is the coaching staff, which you mentioned, liking that coaching staff. I like the moves that Robert Saleh made.
Yeah.
And I think, if you're the Jets, the initial concern anytime you hire a new head coach is how involved is he going to be in the position group he doesn't know or isn't his specialty. I would assume he's going to be pretty heavy-handed in the defensive side. So they hired Jeff Earlback, who is the Atlanta LB's coach. He's a first-year defensive coordinator there. I don't put too much stock in that because I have a feeling Robert's going to be heavy-handed in the defensive side of the ball. The question is he going to be heavy-handed in the offensive side of the ball? Because some head coaches, they are very control freaks. They take over things responsibilities they probably shouldn't have. Most head coaches need to take a stylistic approach of, I am kind of the top of the organization. I need to be focusing on some of the, not getting into the day-to-day of the offense or defense, but more whole picture stuff. There are very few coaches out there. I mean, I can count on one hand probably coaches that can be heavy play callers and head coaches. And his hire of Mike LaFleur, I think, demonstrates that he is going to have full faith in Mike LaFleur running that offense, because Mike LaFleur is a guy that he knows from his time in San Francisco. But Mike has been literally groomed by Kyle Shanahan, who is arguably one of the best play callers in the league right now. I mean, Mike got his start with Mike Shanahan. He was the offensive intern in Cleveland when Kyle Shanahan was the OC. He then followed Shanahan to Atlanta for the 2015-2016 season, where he was an offensive assistant. He then followed him to the 49ers, where he was the passing coordinator and wide receivers coach for a little bit. So, like, this guy, his entire NFL career from an offensive standpoint has been under one of the best play callers. I would assume, based on that hire, Robert's going to kind of let him do his thing with an eye on it. So that's good. They were 2-14 last year. Their win total sits at 6.5. I think they're going under this win total. I don't think this is going to be a very good year. Like you said, they are a couple years away. Zach Wilson, I don't understand the pick because, I look at Justin Fields, who is a very similar quarterback, and he was better in college, I would argue, and his ceiling is higher than Zach Wilson. The thing that worries me a lot about Zach Wilson, and we've talked about this online a lot, is his time at BYU. That man never saw any pressure. Like, he just had all day to throw the ball. His pressure rate on dropbacks last year was only 23.9%. So, like, he had a lot of time. He's not going to have that in the NFL because the O-line is bad. They are making strides. If you're the Jets, you're looking a couple years out. That offense, they're doing the right thing. They're trying to build an offensive line. They drafted Vera Tucker first round. They had Mikael Beacon last year out of the first round. Tucker was dominant in his role with the UFC. He had one blown block on 482 snaps. Maybe he'll be good in the NFL, but like that's something good that you look right there. A fun fact that surprised the shit out of me with this, and you mentioned the receiving core. Do you know the third most expensive receiving core in the NFL?
Are they? How?
I have no idea. I mean,
that is unbelievable.
The Corey Davis contract is a big reason for that, but yeah, they are third most expensive wide receiving.
Corey Davis.
I don't understand it.
He's got a pretty big deal, but he's never had like an elite year before. So I mean, that's a little concerning to me. And I don't think they have a quarterback on the roster that's made one NFL throw.
Yeah.
I don't. When I looked up their quarterbacks, I mean Zach Wilson. Never even heard of James Morgan, and I've never heard of Mike White.
Yep, it's insane.
Am I missing a veteran? Do they have a veteran or no?
They do not. I don't know. I don't know either. Two of those. Their situation is bad. Yeah, they're a complete rebuild. I will say about the Corey Davis thing, he did have a good year last year. Part of that benefited from A.J. Brown being a freak. The one thing that I think, if you're a Jets fan and you're trying to, James Brown was a 4th-round pick in the 2020 draft. So last year, like this last draft. So they have two rookies. Lovely. Wow. His catch rate was pretty good. He caught 70% of the balls that were thrown to him, which is pretty good. So his hands were reliable last year. The defense, like you said, it got a little bit better because you add Carl Lawson, who was huge for them on the edge. I mean, he was 17th among edge rushers in pressure rate last year and among a leader in quarterback hits. You're going to get C.J. Mosley back. I think the defense is going to improve next year, but the offense is a couple years away at minimum, which this is an offense league. The defense isn't good enough to bail out the offense.
No.
They're going to be the most improved group, I think, but that's a problem.
They're a big under for me.
Yeah.
Big under.
Big as well. Yeah. I don't even have to wait for preseason. I mean, it can only really get worse for them. Like,
I would agree. Get it in now.
Yeah. There are some of these teams where I'm like, I want to see what you do in preseason, what you look like, what injuries you have. It doesn't matter for them. I'm automatically going under. Last in the division. Let's move on to the Patriots because they are arguably my most interesting team, I think, this year. They were 7-9 last season. Their win total is 9.5. They are my most interesting because last season they were the most injury-plagued when you factored in COVID opt-outs plus injuries. So they never had a full roster. And this year they're getting some big players back. Plus they went big spending in free agency. So they're my most interesting of how all these pieces are going to fit, what they're going to look like in this kind of somewhat re-looked team. What are your initial thoughts? Where are you at with them?
Yeah, I mean, you said the first thing I wrote down was odd team. They're kind of an odd team. I don't really know what to expect, but when you look at last year and you think of the train wreck that it really wasn't as bad as maybe you sometimes look back on like you said, so many injuries, so many issues with COVID, so many players that didn't even play at all the entire season, especially on the defense.
Yep.
Cam really struggled after he dealt with COVID. He didn't play great before, but he really, really struggled after COVID. Like he just broke down and was not the same. So I expect Cam this year to be on a very short leash. I could see him struggling in like literally 6 games in, 5 games in. If they're like 2-3, 2-4, I could definitely see him switch into Mac Jones. But I do like the team though. Like you said, they went on like a free agency bonanza. Bill Belichick clearly last year, he just noticed that the team's talent level was way down. They had the worst weapons in the NFL last year. The weapons were terrible. They had no one to throw the ball to. So they went out, they got Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Nelson Aguilar on offense. They got Judon, Jalen Mills, Kyle Van Noy. When I look back on them last year, they were 7-9, but they dealt with so much shit. So I think I like them over the 9.5. I take them kind of as like a 10-win team this year.
Yep.
I think Jones will come in, and I think he'll manage them fine. I don't know if you agree that Mac Jones will come in, but I personally think he will. And I think he'll manage them fine. I don't think he'll play lights out or anything like that. But I think this is a 10-win team, in my opinion.
I agree. If you can get the number at 9, I think I would take it as long as there isn't some like big injuries here in like preseason, and you want to tie up your money, because this team's interesting to me. I mean, straight off the bat, Bill Belichick got back to the basics. He spent a lot, which is new, but he got back to the basics, and that is, I need good tight ends. The number one trait among good offenses is a good tight end, and Bill Belichick has known that since he was a head coach of the Browns, and you definitely saw that in the system he ran with Gronk when he went after and got Aaron Hernandez, when he had Watson early in Tom Brady's career. Like, he understands the importance of the tight end position. So those were his first 2 signings, Hunter Henry and Smith, which were big deals. Now, are they the greatest tight ends in the league? No, but they add a huge dynamic that they just didn't have last year. And you're right with Cam Newton. He started off the season well, and then COVID very much affected him. And then he did not play well. But the one thing that he did do very good was deep balls. He was the number 1 quarterback on accuracy with passes above 20 yards last season. It was the only area that he was good. The rest of the areas he was really kind of in mid to high 30s ranked on accuracy and other kind of areas. But the deep ball was very good for him, which you pair him with Nelson Aguilar, who isn't the best, but last year he was a big kind of deep threat. He had a career high 7.5 yards average depth of target. He had 18.7 yards per catch, which was a career high as well. He produced the 4th most points in the league on throws over 15 yards downfield. So you get Cam a big kind of weapon. And you look at the numbers, Cam also, when you break down Tom Brady's numbers the year before, they're eerily similar. Now, I'm not saying Cam Newton, I kind of agree with you. I think he's going to make it about halfway, and then the body's going to start to go, and you're going to see Mac Jones, and he's on a short leash. But I'm also not hating Cam going into the season because of what he had to deal with last year between COVID, a depleted roster, no real weapons. I mean, he lost Edelman early in the season, his only real weapon. So it's hard to evaluate him. He's also in a new system, a weird offseason. I think he's going to be better this year, but I also agree because we've seen Cam. He's not Lamar Jackson where he's avoiding a lot of big hits. He encouraged big hits early in his career because he was just so overpowering. He was a defensive end playing quarterback size-wise. So the body is starting to break down, so that is concerning. But I think he's going to be better, and I think that deep ball accuracy, pairing him with Nelson, gives him something downfield to work with this season. And then you mix in the tight ends, this offense is going to be much more revamped, which is why I like over the 9 wins. And I haven't even really gotten to the defense yet, which you get players back like Dante Hightower. You add a pass rusher in Ronnie Perkins in the 3rd round. You're getting Kyle Van Noy back. You add him with Chase Winovich, who was really their big edge guy last year and played fantastic. You get Matt Judon. You got C.T. Jackson, who's a fucking stud out at corner. I mean, PFF has him as allowing the lowest pass rating in the league. The team is interesting. Now, how all the pieces are going to fit is the interesting part. The O-line's decent, but I like 9 wins. I think that's easily doable, close to 10.
Yeah, I think so too. It's weird because it's not a typical Patriots team that's put together with like a massive free agency, like tight off season. That's not a typical Patriots thing. But I just think the fact that they went 7-9 last year really at the time seemed terrible. But looking back on it, it's almost like that was almost impressive that they even went 7-9. That team was just destroyed up and down the roster. So I like their chances this year to just have a pretty good bounce back here.
Yep. And you've got, I think, Bill, there's incentive to kind of flex the muscle here this season
Yes.
and see what he can do, especially with the talk. I mean, two guys in Tom Brady and Bill Belichick who are very much motivated by outside talk. I mean, you saw Tom Brady in his interviews this week wanting to flame teams this season who wouldn't take a chance on him. Bill Belichick's the exact same way, with everybody saying it was Tom, not Bill. It's going to be interesting. And you look at their schedule. It's tough, but there are a lot of winnable games for them in there.
Yes.
Especially in a division that is not very good overall. I mean, Bills are very good. We're going to get to the Dolphins here in the thought, but I like this team, and I like what they did. The spending money was interesting. I love that they went back to the tight end. I mean, that's what makes that drink stir in New England. It has been for years, outside of the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
But it's good. They do have, yeah. I mean, it's a decent schedule for them, I think. So, all right. I don't know if you had anything else before we move on there, but those are kind of my thoughts. Cool. All right. The Dolphins. The surprise of last year, I would say for sure, in how well they played. 10-6. Their win total, I saw it was sitting at 9.5. What are your initial thoughts on them?
Well, I mean, we know what the big factor with the Dolphins is. I mean, it's mostly Tua. They're an interesting team, though. The schedule's pretty tough in the beginning, especially basically through like mid-November. But then towards the end, they kind of have a breeze at the end of their schedule there. But a big portion of the team's success definitely relies on Tua. Last year, he was very hot and cold. He kind of started to get careless towards the end of the season, started to really turn the ball over after not really turning the ball over at all. He wasn't really flashy. He wasn't really pushing the ball down the field, playing very aggressive. Although he had a good record, I think he went like 6-3. But it was just kind of a weird game that he was playing. I do like his weapons this year, though. Devontae Parker, Will Fuller, Jalen Waddle, I think is going to be a stud. Mike Gesicki at tight end. So I do like those weapons. None of them are exactly, Will Fuller is pretty good. Parker's pretty good. None of them are proven studs, but I mean, I think they're all very good, and I think Waddle could be really good. Last offseason, I know they did a ton to address their offensive line, and it's pretty much it didn't do anything. Their offensive line was terrible because they did so much to address it last offseason. They couldn't really address it this offseason, so that's my big concern for the team, especially with Tua, because he's pretty injury prone, as we know. He's smaller, he's on the smaller side, so I'm concerned about that. But I don't know. This team, you said you had them at 9.5.
I have their win total sitting at 9.5 is what I saw one line at.
It's tough to say. I mean, they had a really good defense last year, but I know Xavier Howard he's holding out right now, which has been a big concern. It's going to be resulting in a trade, and that would be a huge blow for that defense. I mean, Xavier Howard is locked down. He will lock down an entire half of the field, whoever he's covering all game long. So if they lose him, that would be a huge blow. I just am concerned about Tua and how he's going to be able to run the offense. I've kind of gone on record and said I have concerns about Tua in the NFL. I'm going to actually probably go under 9.5. I see this team kind of being an 8-9 win team. I like the offensive weapons, but I don't love the quarterback. I don't love the offensive line, and I'm concerned about the defense if they lose Xavier Howard.
I think you hit all the key points there. Not a lot of disargument here once again. I think this is a team that's due for a regression. I mean,
yeah,
you're right. Tua is the X factor. I mean, their success lies heavily on them. But last year they got bailed out big time by turnover luck. I mean, they forced a lot of turnovers. They also recovered a lot of turnovers. Some of that luck, some of that not. But anytime a team relies heavily on turnovers to win football games, you kind of expect that to regress the following year. It's hard to duplicate turnover success like that year after year, especially when Howard, your best player on defense, and for whatever reason, I guess the Dolphins just hate having good secondary players because, they trade Fitzpatrick, Mika Fitzpatrick. They're looking to get rid of him. I mean, I don't know if they've noticed, but it's kind of hard to find those guys. They're a dime in the dozen in a league that is progressively becoming more pass happy. I don't understand.
Right, and I believe he's only 28.
Yeah.
So I'd pay him.
Yeah, I'd pay him too. These are not positions you just give away willy-nilly. Now, if you're doing it to trade for Deshaun Watson, which I initially saw before his legal troubles, okay, the trade-off there may be worth it. Because of the player you're getting back. But that's about it. Tua, I'm with you. I was never a Tua fan. So, I'm going to kind of put that out there that I am a little biased. I don't think he's going to succeed in the NFL. If they want him to succeed, though, they are definitely giving him weapons to do so. They have a very explosive, potentially, offense here, especially on the deep ball. They have Will Fuller, who until he pulls his hamstring mid-season is a take the defense, top off the defense. And then you have Waddle, who can really stretch the field. And you're pairing him with Tua, who he's familiar with in college. So you're setting up for big plays, which Tua is an aggressive quarterback in college. He likes to throw a deep ball. But I have concerns about his ability to hold up. I also have concerns about how bad he was on third downs. This team has got to get better at giving him more manageable third downs. If that's passing more in first down, which he's very successful at. When you look at his numbers, he's much more successful passing early than later. So setting him up in bad passing situations isn't great. Last year's hard to evaluate rookie quarterbacks too, because you had a weird offseason. You didn't have because of COVID. He's also a guy who's coming off a very serious injury. So I don't think there's a fair evaluation yet of him, but if you want to set him up for success, you're sort of seeing it, but they're still off. I mean, they still need to build up that offensive line. Austin Jackson, the left tackle, is the only player on that offensive line that I would say is worth his salt, at all. That's a bad group. Wide receivers are good, though. Running backs could be a little bit better. Tight ends are decent there, obviously. But that is the concern. It's the Tua factor. And he did not rank well last year in really any statistical category. It wasn't a good time for him.
No, he didn't. I would not let the 6-3 record confuse you or anything, because he didn't. It wasn't really because of him. I just think this team is just huge in regards to boom or bust, and I'm just leaning more towards a bust.
I agree. I see regression here. I don't see them really progressing here. There's just too much going. Now, they could be good in a couple of years, but and Ryan Fitzpatrick, the other thing we didn't mention, I mean, he was another huge reason for their success offensively. He played phenomenal last year. I don't know if you mentioned him or not. I'm sorry, I may have blanked that out. But that's another guy. It's just the production was heavy on him. So I don't have a lot of good things. I'm going under here. I think this isn't a team, once again, I think we see a regression with them. But I also think Brian Flores is a great coach, and the defense will play well, and he's a good fundamental coach. It's just the pieces and the talent aren't there to compete.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, let's talk about the team that won me money last year, the team I think most people bet to win last year, this division, which was a pretty solid bet, safe bet, I would have said. It was my big one last year. The Buffalo Bills. They were 13-3 last year. Their win total sits at about 11.5 last I saw. Coaching is amazing here. That's my biggest takeaway. This coaching staff has done a phenomenal job. The moment Sean McDermott walked in that door 4 years ago, you could sense this team was on the up and up, and they have been doing so. Brian Daboll, did I pronounce that right? Brian Daboll. I don't know. I'm terrible at pronunciations. The offensive coordinator has been fantastic. I'm surprised he didn't get a head coaching job last year. I don't know if he'll be a good head coach, but he's done all the things that you would normally get a head coaching job. I mean, he took Josh Allen, who most of us saw as a raw product, probably not going to be a great quarterback, but a decent quarterback, and made him into a guy that we were talking about MVP at one point. Where do you see the Bills at? Where are we kind of going here?
I like this team. This is a fun team, in my opinion. I like them kind of for years to come even. They have some tough games. They have Chiefs and Titans back-to-back. I think both prime time. Those are going to be two awesome prime time games that we're all going to get to watch. Chiefs, Titans against them. But then they have your Bucks as well, so that's going to be a great game. But overall, the schedule is not too terrible, especially for a 17-game schedule with the number sitting at 11. I do like this team. Quarterback, obviously, as you mentioned, Josh Allen blew up last year in year 3. A lot of times for quarterbacks, year 3 is a pretty big year, so it was great to see him blow up that way. Can he do it again? I think so. It's kind of hard to have a year like that, kind of not be able to repeat it. We have seen it before, but I think he's got great weapons when they brought in Diggs. They brought in Emmanuel Sanders, who I think is like a quarterback's like best friend. He's so good at getting open within like 7 yard, just like 7 yard routes. He can get open. Like they have Cole Beasley, when he's not making controversial comments, he's actually pretty open.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't catch COVID.
Yeah, exactly. Him and Sanders, Beasley and Sanders, they're both very similar players, very shifty, very quick getting open routes, kind of a quarterback's best friend type situation. They just have a perfect set of wide receivers. They have the Alpha and Diggs, and they have both. They have those two. Running back, and it's okay. Singletary, Zach Moss, and Breida. But today's NFL, I'm never overly concerned about the running back cores. Really, you can. I don't want to say you can get anyone to do it. Not everyone's a stud, but almost everyone can do it.
Yep.
I just like this team. They didn't lose any huge pieces, and they were very good last year. The defense was okay. Ed Oliver has actually been just very disappointing, which is shocking. So we're still waiting for him to come out. But a 17-game season, I love over 11 or 11 and a half. This is a top 3 team in the NFL, in my opinion. This is, after the Chiefs, this is, my opinion, the second best team in the AFC.
I'd agree. I mean, it sucks because the AFC is better than the NFC this year, I think. Top to bottom. That's not even controversial. And the Bills very much do not benefit from that fact because there's so many good teams in front of them. But this is a team that, you're right, they didn't really lose a lot. And they gained some key players in some key areas. Emmanuel Sanders to begin with. I mean, I love what this Bills teams did to begin with. They were like, we have a quarterback that can throw the ball to the moon. Let's go out and get him a guy that can go under and run it and get Diggs. And then they added Sanders to that, and you're pairing him continually to have success. Josh Allen was incredibly impressive last year compared to years prior. He moved into the top 10 in most categories, like from an accuracy standpoint. He became really accurate against man coverage, which I thought was interesting. He was the 8th best quarterback against man coverage from an accuracy standpoint. The guy played so much better. And the OC there, I can't say it enough, has done such an incredible job of developing him, of adapting. They added more pre-motion kind of snap stuff. They also, fun fact about the Bills last year, they only punted 42 times this season, which there's only been one other team since the NFL shifted to 16 games to punt less than 42 times, and those are the 90 Oilers. Like, pretty interesting little fact there. They incorporated a lot more play action, which helped Josh Allen last year. So, once again, they've been developing him, and they've tailored the offense. They didn't get stuck in their ways. They saw, hey, we need to make adjustments, and they went out and they made the adjustments, and that helped. And the biggest credit to that coaching staff, because I cannot say enough about them, their ability to adjust on the fly. I went down, I bought a Warren Sharp's book, and I tracked down their statistics. On the first 5 minutes of the third quarter, they are basically either first or second in just about every category, meaning they come out in the second half, they see what you did, and they made an adjustment. They're second in scoring, second in touchdowns. They are number 1 in turnovers as far as not turning over the ball. They're 6th in punts. They're 4th in yards. Like, they make adjustments. The coaching staff is so good there. I think Leslie Frazier on the defense does a good job. The offense does a great job. Coaching makes a difference here, and you're seeing that. And the roster is, they didn't lose much. They got a good offensive line. They got good weapons. Like you said, the running back position isn't strong. You don't look at that running back room and go, man, that's a good running back room. But you look at it and you go, they get the job done. And that's all you really need. The secondary is good. The front 7 is concerning on the defense. I mean, Edmonds is a stud, but the back end is very good. The front seven is, I don't know. They need to be able to get more pressure up front, I think, to really take that next step and be a Super Bowl team. You're not going to beat the Chiefs if you can't get pressure. You're not going to beat potentially the Browns, depending on I'm very high in the Browns this season, if you can't speed up Baker Mayfield's internal clock. If you let him sit back there and pick you apart, that's going to be a problem. So that's the area I think they have to most improve if they want to be Super Bowl contenders or potential Super Bowl champions, but I think they're a contender to win the AFC once again this year.
Yeah, I think so. I think you said it well. I think they're kind of most likely going to be a team that's going to have a lot of shootouts. They'll probably win most of the shootouts, but yeah, their issue is their front 7. They don't get a ton of pressure, and in the playoffs, a lot of times, defensive line domination is kind of what wins it.
Yep, I mean, you win championships sort of like you build houses. You have to have a good foundation. You're not gonna have a good house if you don't have a foundation. You're not gonna have a Super Bowl team. Just look at my Bucks. I mean, they made Patrick
It's
Mahomes.
true.
I mean, he didn't have much of an offensive line, but like still, like they brought the house and he struggled. So this is kind of what you need. I do like the Bills win total here. Like I said, I'm heavy on their coaching staff. It's super good. Defensively, the player I would look for the most improvement this year is Jerry Hughes on the pressure side. He was 22nd last year among edge rushers in pressure rate, second in pass rush win rate. So look for him to kind of be the big, I think, linchpin there. But I like the Bills. I mean, they're my pick to win the division. I sense it's your pick to win the division. I don't see much regression here. I think, if anything, they're going to get better with what they've added, if that's even possible. I mean, statistically, it might regress a little bit because they're so much higher offensively than they had been in years past, but I don't think that takes off much there.
Yeah, no, they're one of the best teams in the NFL, in my opinion.
I agree. All right, so we've got what? Bills. I think the Pats might finish second here.
I have the Pats 2, Dolphins 3, Jets 4. That's what I got.
As always, we just have a lot of controversy on this show between hosts. I like it. I think that's good. I think that was a good breakdown there. I don't know if you have anything else in the NFL before we move on. Quick hitters into the NBA. Do you have any other final notes there?
No, we could do some NBA.
Let's talk NBA. Giannis is the goddamn king of the world right now. I could not be honestly happier for the man. He's got a great story. What he did, I don't know if it's the greatest. People point to like the Michael Jordan Utah game, obviously, but as far as closeout games, that might be one of the most memorable closeout games I have ever seen. That man dominated from tip to finish, and he made DeAndre Ayton look like a bucket of water. Hell, the whole Phoenix Suns team for that matter. Incredible playoff series for them. Incredible for Giannis. Just insane. I mean, I was extremely happy for them, to say the least.
Yeah, it was awesome. Giannis is clearly an awesome person, but yeah, from the tip to the end of that game, he was possessed, just dominating everyone down low, just throwing everyone out of the way. He played great. I don't want to be a party pooper here, but everyone now is like saying, because he had 2 MVPs and he won the finals, now he's automatically the best player and the face of the NBA. No, he's not. I'm sorry. I don't want to be a party pooper. He's top 5 maybe, but this does not automatically just make him the best player in the NBA.
No.
Other than that, that was an incredible performance. One of the best performances in recent NBA history, maybe all time. That was awesome.
Yeah, incredible. I agree with you. I was hearing that talk. I mean, are we forgetting about a man named Kevin Durant out there? I mean,
come on.
Like, what are we talking about here? Hell, I put LeBron over him too. I mean, Giannis is phenomenal. There are some arguments out there that I was hearing where maybe he could be top 3. I won't oppose that. Definitely top 5. But yeah, definitely not the best player. One of the faces of the NBA now, I think for sure. He did definitely rubber stamp his kind of face on the NBA. I wouldn't say the face. The biggest thing he's going to have going for him, though, now, which is kind of a stupid thing when we talk about the super teams and kind of what happened in the context of injuries and stuff, but he did win it without, loading up a team, and that is going to buy him so much. Sort of like Dirk, when Dirk ended up beating LeBron.
Yes.
Like, his legacy is now going to be amplified due to that. And you saw it with him and Chris Middleton, who came to the team at the same time. They built it together. It did. I'm not going to say it felt more, but it felt more genuine in their celebration than when you saw, Kevin Durant celebrating with Golden State or things like that. Like,
right.
It felt like a bigger moment. I'll say that.
It did. And it would have helped, though, if they had beaten a super team, because I think the moment would have felt back to who won that finals, which is probably why it was such an awesome finals. But yeah, Giannis, I mean, everyone always, he was already extremely popular in the NBA, but everyone now is seeing just how likable he is. And just beloved.
And just an awesome dude. Like, he could have gone anywhere. He could have gone to any city, anywhere, and he decided to stay in Milwaukee, which is not like, I hear Milwaukee's great, but let's be real. Like, if you're an NBA
it's
superstar,
not Miami.
Yeah, it's not Miami, it's not LA, it's not New York. Like, it's not a major city. Definitely not Miami. So it's nice. It was nice to see. We'll see what they can do. The dynasty talk, I saw some people asking the question, which just seemed ludicrous. Like, no, there's not going to build unless they get another big player and build a super team. there's not a dynasty there. It isn't going to
No.
happen.
And we had a great NBA playoffs, but I'm hoping next year's NBA playoffs comes with more health overall, because
I
literally
agree.
every star is dropping left and right. So hopefully next year, all teams are fully loaded, because we want everyone to be healthy.
I agree. Any other final thoughts before we wrap this bad boy up?
Nope, not really.
My only thought is I hope TJ cheating Dillashaw takes a nice knee to the face this weekend. If all of you UFC fans are out there, TJ Dillashaw is making his debut return. I have zero respect for the guy. Anytime you cheat in a sport that dangerous by using performance-enhancing drugs, where literally you're trying to physically impose your will on another human being and you're using those types of drugs, I lose all respect for you. That includes John Jones. He is still one of the greatest fighters ever, but he will never be the greatest in my book because of it. But TJ Dillashaw, I hope you take a nice knee to the face.
Yeah, he's a little snake-like. Yeah, hopefully he's got some ring rust.
Dude, 2-year layoff is a big layoff, especially in a sport that is global like that. Everybody in the world fights. Like, to take 2 years off and not get time in the ring. We've seen Conor, who took big layoffs, what effect it had on him. Like, it has an effect on dudes. But I do love those clips of Conor, like, back in the day when they did, what is that?
Ultimate Fighter.
Ultimate Fighter. He's calling him a snake in the grass, and just the heatedness there. That was French kiss to the future there. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to that fight. That's sort of my ending thought. I think it was good. AFC East is going to be an interesting division. Definitely not one of the best, but they add a team to make what is the best conference in the Buffalo Bills to the mix. So it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. And that'll do it for us. And as always, peace.